The Fantastic Four, Marvel's first family, the creation of both Stan Lee and Jack Kirby based on 60s Americana, and a franchise that's seen, let's face it, incredibly mixed or outright bad live-action adaptations. Which is strange when you consider that the best Fantastic Four movie isn't even about the Fantastic Four.
Honey!
What?
Where's my super suit?
What?
Where is my super suit?
Regardless of that though, there have been 4 attempts to make a decent film of the family, and none of them have really been adopted as being the definitive versions of these characters. Until now. With Matt Shakman's film coming out soon, I thought it'd be interesting to go through the past attempts and see what the hell happened to these movies. Studio meddling, incompetent writers or directors, hothead movie stars? Let's find out. In 1986, German producer Bernd Eichinger obtained the film rights to Marvel's Fantastic Four for approximately $250,000. While not ideal for Stan Lee and co back then, it's no surprise when you consider the financial rut that Marvel was in during the 80s and 90s. The most infamous of this example being the film rights of Spider-Man being sold to Sony Pictures. Anyway, Eichinger was a big fan of the comic franchise, but upon getting the film rights for 6 years, nothing came to be in that time due to budgetary reasons. So, with the expiration coming up by the end of 1992, and Marvel not willing to extend, the only option to not lose those film rights was to get a film in production as fast as possible at the lowest cost possible. By the fall of 1992, Eichinger tapped Roger Corman to help produce the film. Corman, a well-known producer in his own right, had garnered a reputation for producing B-films and having future workers get their foot in the industry, such as James Cameron, Martin Scorsese, Francis Ford Coppola, and many, many more. Eichinger and Corman agreed to produce the film on an ambitious $1 million budget, with Ole Sassone to direct. The cast consisted of Alex Hyde White as Reed Richards, Rebecca Stabb as Sue Storm, Jay Underwood as Johnny Storm, Michael Bailey Smith as Ben Grimm, and Joseph Culp as Victor Von Doom. The film began shooting on December 28, 1992, 3 days before the film rights were set to expire. Production reportedly lasted for 21 days. But this point is contested because by the tail end of production, shots were still needed to finish the movie. But when Corman and his studio refused due to, well, budgetary reasons, that came as a massive red flag. Post-production was where all the dominoes fell. Sassone was editing the film on another film set. The cast had a grassroots campaign that saw them promote the movie with their own money. The composers of the film had to drop $6,000 to produce the score, and a myriad of other problems that come along with movie making that didn't help the crew either. Trailers for the movie being shown through the summer of 1993, and the worldwide release being slated for January 19, 1994. But that hard work and dedication to the project by the cast and crew would never see that date. Shortly before the end of 1993, Marvel issued a cease and desist order to the cast and crew, with film producer Avi Arad reportedly purchasing every print of the film to ensure the movie never saw the light of day. Arad being the founder and former CEO of Marvel Films, now Marvel Studios. And the reason for this was simple. The film was the last of which was out of the hands of Marvel themselves. And with the recently founded studio for this sort of thing, corporate synergy under one banner and one vision was probably a goal they had in mind. And Eichinger, Corman, and Sassone's The Fantastic Four was standing in the way. After being sold off, speculation would come up surrounding the film, such as it was never being intended to be shown to anyone in the first place, which both Stan Lee and Bernd Eichinger had very different claims on. But years and decades later, the film would eventually make its way online through bootleg recordings. While it was lost media for decades, it eventually got to see the light of day. So there's that at least. With that last wall standing in the way of Avi Arad, Marvel, and 20th Century Fox, they can finally go full steam ahead with their vision of a comic book cinematic universe. Well, initially, Christopher Columbus was hired to write and direct a Fantastic Four film in 1995, with Michael France to help pen the screenplay. Columbus would eventually step down and opted to produce the film instead. Then Peter Segal was hired in 1997 to direct, who was then replaced by Sam Wiseman at the end of that year, who then left at a later date. And by 1999, with the rights set to expire yet again, Eichinger, 20th Century Fox, and Marvel signed a 2-year extension as development was taking longer than expected. Raja Gosnell was then hired to direct, but then opted out towards the end of 2000 to do a Scooby-Doo film instead. Then, in April of 2001, Peyton Reed signed on to direct the film, with Mark Frost being brought in to yet again another rewrite. And you could probably see the pattern by now. Reed dropped out of the project in July of 2003, citing creative differences with the studio. But finally, by April of 2004, Tim Story would sign on to direct, and he'd end up being the guy to do the job. The cast would consist of Ioan Gruffudd as Reed Richards, Jessica Alba as Sue Storm, Chris Evans as Johnny Storm, Michael Chiklis as Ben Grimm, and Julian McMahon as Victor Von Doom. So finally, over a decade after the cancelled world premiere of Marvel's First Family on the big screen, through so many directors and numerous rewrites, the Fantastic Four would finally start production under the Marvel and 20th Century Fox banner, with, of course, Avi Arad being one of the key producers. Trailers would be shown through early 2005, with the film releasing on July 8th of that year. The movie came out to mixed and below average reception, citing bad pacing, a bland story, meh acting, and overall uninspired filmmaking, which, coming off Sam Raimi's 2002 Spider-Man, probably provided a lot of whiplash. Regardless of the reception though, with the film holding an estimated $90 to $100 million budget against its $333 million worldwide box office, it's kinda seen as a mild success, especially when you consider its rocky development. On the bright side though, it'd be good enough for its sequel, Fantastic Four: The Rise of the Silver Surfer, to be greenlit pretty much right away. Tim Story and Mark Frost would return as the director and writer respectively, and so would the main cast. Lawrence Fishburne would voice the Silver Surfer, and Doug Jones would play the character physically. Production would begin in August of 2006, with the film slated for June 2007. And well, nothing bad really came through filming. Trailers would show through the start of 2007, including one ahead of the release of Spider-Man 3 on May of that year. The result? Well, pretty much the same critical reception, but with a budget of $130 million against a $302 million worldwide box office, the writing was pretty much on the wall to pull the plug on this iteration of the family, reboot in the future, and hope for the best that everything goes just as planned. In 2009, 20th Century Fox would officially reboot the franchise. But it wouldn't be until the summer of 2012 where they'd finally find the writer-director combo in Jeremy Slater and Josh Trank. And this, right here, is where the problems would start right away. While Slater is the writer for the film, Trank decided to pen his own script instead. This led the project to not only have two screenplays, but two very different visions. Slater's vision would see the family be closer to their comic counterparts, taking inspiration from various different comic book runs, as well as using the 2012 Avengers film as a base. Trank's vision, on the other hand, saw the family be adapted closer to a more realistic and gritty tone, using Batman Begins and The Dark Knight as inspirations. Trank's version would eventually be the direction taken by the studio. This would result in Slater leaving the project and Simon Kinberg to come in and co-write the film with Trank. Casting would be done shortly after in 2014 with Miles Teller as Reed Richards, Kate Mara as Sue Storm, Michael B. Jordan as Johnny Storm, Jamie Bell as Ben Grimm, and Toby Kebbell as Victor Von Doom. The casting of Jordan as Johnny led to an incredible amount of online backlash and outrage, leading to Trank receiving death threats. Production would go ahead in the summer of 2014, which reportedly saw very heated days between the cast and Trank. The film's ending would receive a rewrite through production. Reshoots would be done in 2015, as the studio wasn't satisfied with it. Hell, they weren't satisfied with the film in its entirety, nor Trank himself, leading to both Trank and the studio to butt heads through production, post-production, reshoots, and promotional tours. So much so that Trank would criticize the film a day before release, pretty much saying that this wasn't his film, denouncing the final product, 20th Century Fox, and its studio heads in the process. The film would release in August of 2015 and would earn $168 million in the box office against its reported $120 million budget. It received terrible reviews from critics and comic book fans alike, and it would essentially silence any talks of a potential sequel. This would be the last Fantastic Four movie released by Fox, and 2 years later, the company would be acquired by Disney. The film rights would be given to Marvel Studios in 2019. In that same year, Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige would announce a new Fantastic Four film was officially in development.
I didn't even have time to talk about the Fantastic Four.
The Fantastic Four, as shown on the silver screen through years and decades, has been marked with controversial films. From the surface, it's not really a property that should be that difficult to figure out. And as shown in the video, the real curse that the family had to go through its adaptations are creative vision and office politics. So, almost 10 years after the last Fantastic Four movie, a new iteration of the characters are set to be released, under one banner that is the Marvel Studios umbrella. Is it gonna be the best film for Marvel's first family, or is it gonna be so micromanaged that it ends up like some of the past few movies from Feige and the studio? Well, there's really only one way to find out if the curse is truly broken. This is a piece of media. Thanks for watching.